So Phil Matier and I asked former San Francisco Mayor Willie Brown, what playbook is Rudy Giuliani operating out of?
His own. As a matter of fact, it's one that he writes on a daily basis. And it seems to be working for just two people, he and Donald Trump.
It seemed like they got together, sort of came up with this idea of how to deal with the fact that there is documentary evidence of repayment of that $130,000.
To Stormy Daniels.
Exactly, to Stormy Daniels. How do we explain it? Yes.
Or an affair that allegedly happened years ago but threatened to come out at the ending days of the campaign.
But wait, that's something. Not repayment. That lawyer got that money up front. Believe me, that lawyer is like all lawyers. We don't really pay our clients' bills and expect our client to eventually pay, particularly if you know Trump. He has a terrible history of not paying his bills and not honoring his debts.
But we are not lawyers like Michael Cohen. I would never refer to a client as father figure, invite them to, you know, family events. Like, there's definitely a very special relationship.
Politically, however, going out there.
Did you hear that?
What?
The relationship between these two guys?
Yeah, it's not normal.
Well, speaking about relationship between guys not being or questionably normal, you have Rudy Giuliani, who was basically running against Donald Trump in the primary, who was completely disabused by Trump when they were running, and now is back as his lawyer. Why would you trust somebody that you ridiculed to handle your
Because each of those guys have a very unique talent. They have no knowledge of what they did yesterday. And that works, believe me. That ensures that you can be passionate about tomorrow.
So don't you think the evolving story is going to get this White House and the president, maybe even Giuliani, in trouble? Because it just seems like the facts continue to shift.
They do, but also they could muddy the water such that they can prevent any sort of singular narrative from taking hold and maybe to some degree, you know, create a fog that allows them to operate in the background, at least for now. But
investigators have reportedly questioned the president's longtime friend and major fundraiser, Tom Barrack. Barrack had close ties to Paul Manafort, the president's former campaign chairman, who was indicted on charges including conspiracy to launder money. The president maintains there was no collusion.
Now, Phil Matier and I asked former San Francisco Mayor Willie Brown about the Mueller investigation, and if President Trump was his client, what would he advise the president to do?
Shut up, take the fifth.
Seriously?
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, Phil, anytime you're in a situation in which almost anything you say could ultimately be turned into something that would get you prosecuted, not for the substance, but for your answers, it would be better off if you did not answer at all. If you let me answer, you paid me to answer.
Well, I mean, I think that seems to be absolutely true, assuming Donald Trump is the type to take advice from lawyers, which I'm not sure is really ever the case. So it'll be interesting to see that with his new legal team coming in, what they're going to do. They've now been handed this sort of situation with Rudy Giuliani's statements, and then all of a sudden Emmett has to come in and say, what do I do with this?
How would the American public react to the idea of the President of the United States taking the fifth?
The way in which the guy would frame it, the same way America has reacted to everything else he's done. He sets a whole new standard. It's not measured about how it would be perceived if Obama took the fifth that he was hiding something. With Trump, he was being clever and warded off his friends and enemies and the people that no longer support him.
What risk does he take sitting down with Mueller?
It's a huge risk. It's an absolute risk. And assuming those questions are right, and we don't know if that's accurate at all. It was written by Trump's lawyer, so we don't know if that's real. But if he sits down, all Mueller has to do is give an open-ended question and just let President Trump start talking, because the president doesn't know everything else that everyone else has said that the Mueller can use to then sort of confront the president.
And you raised the issue, whether or not those are the questions. I can guarantee you they won't be, because that Trump lawyer has taken those questions off the table. He can't come up with Mueller with the same questions now. That would be a confirmation of a leak. He's got to come up with some new ones.
Wow. It was more a list of topics than questions. I think that's still ground that would probably be covered if the president sat down with Mueller.
So you think if the president says, I don't think that I'm going to be treated fairly, I'm not going to agree to this interview, or I just plead the fifth, his hardcore supporters probably line up behind him if he does that, right?
I think they line up behind him if he does that. They line up behind him if he's indicted for obstruction. It's hard to imagine a scenario where that 30% or so of folks who are behind him would abandon him, given what we think we understand about the contours of the case.